Hi everyone and welcome to another Lads, Dads and Granddads.
We have something really special planned for you today. We're having a round table discussion.
And we're hoping this is going to be the first of many of these.
The more we've been speaking to men over the last few months, we realise that this is something really important to discuss and to challenge each other with about men's mental health and the big challenges that life throws at us.
Today is going to be quite unique. We're not going to have an expert leading this. We're not going to have one of our pastors leading this. This will feature men who they themselves have been affected directly by mental health issues or have first-hand experience at helping people who've been affected by these.
So if you have been affected or if you know somebody who's been affected by men's mental health, we'd really encourage you to maybe pass this video on, or you yourself really listen and engage to what we have to say. Get a wee cup of tea going and just sit back, enjoy, and let's hope that there's something really important for you to learn from through this.
I'm Andrew McAnally, I'm 49 and I'm a telecoms engineer from Ayr.
Hello, I'm Adam Gilmore. I am 32 and I'm an electrician.
I'm William Campbell, I'm 48 years old and I'm a classroom assistant in Tarview Primary School.
Right, I'll start, sure. What is your experience of someone experiencing poor mental health? I suppose I'd answer that one to start with. I think for me, my first experience of somebody experiencing mental health was when my mum tried to commit suicide for the first time. And then from there with her, it was like this was an ongoing situation with her with her mental health, so bipolar and a couple, amongst other things. But and then from there, like quite recently in the last sort of 2 years, I've lost 3 people I've served with and the forces with to suicide, and a couple of quite people I know quite well, quite closely, or struggling with other problems in mental health as well. So. Yeah, it's. What about you? William?
Well, it's, wow. I've experienced it obviously personally myself, having gone through I suppose what we would have called back in the day, a nervous breakdown back in 2014. That was a very real experience because obviously I was going through it myself. Yes, and I know people who have experienced, let's say, poor mental health. There's an awful lot of it at the minute. It's very, I hate to use that word, topical, but I think more people are starting to talk about it, starting to open up about it. A very good friend of mine at the minute is going through a very difficult time, very difficult for his family as well. And it's, as I said, experience just at the minute.
My first experience would be like yours, Adam, was my mother. She's always struggled with depression as long as I've been alive. So it wasn't really talked about. It was kind of, your mum's not having a good day. But years later then I came to understand what that meant.
It's mad, isn't it? It's especially when it's somebody else, and like, I mean, for me, it's like when it's somebody else and you at the start, it's like when you hear something, like, what? Sure, that person's doing great.
Yeah.
You don't really know what's going on behind the scenes, like, it's just, it's quite hard to take in sometimes, and you don't understand. Sometimes you want to understand, but you don't. You're like,
Yeah. It's quite often your family are the only people you can be real with.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll ask another question. So, Adam, What was your first experience of poor mental health?
I'll be honest, I personally haven't struggled with mental health. My experience is more with other people, confiding in their own experiences and going through with, I said before, like friends who have quite recently committed suicide. Some people I serve with. I would say the first time I ever actually seen somebody going through a situation. I look back now, and it was when I was in Afghanistan. I remember one of the medics in the middle of a firefight actually just putting his head on his hands and only way I can describe it is crying to go home, like a child, And
Yeah.
at the time, you're just like, flip sake, mate, stand up and let's go. You just didn't understand it. So it's getting that that breaking down that stigma. You actually don't. You need to look behind the scenes, look under the covers, and you're going, well, why did that happen? That's an extreme example, but I remember thinking back now, you're like, well, that guy just we lost 2 people in 2 days in his hands. You're sitting going, fuck, But at the time, like, fuck sake, mate, come on, It's, that's easy to be saying that now. We look back, well, fuck me, it's rough, and dear knows what that guy's doing now or where he is. What about you?
I've kind of always been like a daydreamer, deep thinker. Remember spending many a Saturday afternoon lying on my bed staring at the ceiling, just thinking about things. Never really, I thought that was just normal for me. And it wasn't until in my kind of late teens, early 20s that I realised that my mood would never be constant and could flip just very quickly. I could walk down a set of stairs and go from being completely fine to in the depths of despair, just like that. I struggled with that for all of my adult life. What about you, Willian?
Well, I've sort of answered that, I suppose,
Yeah.
already. Just to give you a little sort of bit more background, maybe to that. 2014, life had been pretty normal. I'd never ever really struggled with mental health issues. I was obviously aware, that people did suffer, but for me, it wasn't something I really ever thought about. Life was going along fine. As I say, and then different things happened. There was, don't want to go into, I don't have the time today to go into all the detail. Come along to church here, and then got baptized. And then after baptism, a very spiritual kind of awakening, a sort of revealing basically of my heart. God was basically showing me as areas that I needed to really address. And so that began a process, a wonderful process, an amazing process. But during that process, I slipped into, as I say, poor mental health, and ended up actually in Downpatrick for almost a fortnight, on medication. It's quite a scary thing for people to hear that word, antipsychotic medication. So here I was in a brand new situation of what is going on here, and but as I say, we'll talk more about that. Say when the other questions I suppose come along, but that was my experience from a personal point of view. Yeah. So.
Okay.
Already yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm not on the antipsychotic medication anymore.
So,
I was going to say that explains it. Yeah.
so what did that look like? Those days before having to eventually go to Downpatrick. What?
Well, I kind of made that decision. We were coming back from holiday, and my head was all over the place. I would say hallucinating, imagining all sorts of things. The prognosis, basically, or the diagnosis, was ruminative OCD. A thing that people talk about OCD, and I sort of thought, well, we all do have that thing where we like things. I would be very like that, like things in order. This was a whole other kind of kettle of fish. This was very much kind of a thought to another thought, and then I'm thinking this, so therefore I think that, so that must mean this, so that must mean that, and basically what it looked like was tangles, a lot of tangled, and I couldn't make sense. There was a kind of stepping out of reality, really, I suppose, and that is what they told Mandy, my wife. They actually said that William, he's not able to tell the difference between sort of reality and imagination. It got so out of hand, and it just came to a point where we'd come back from holiday, and we were in London, 2014, and it was just London. At the best of times, is a very busy place. There's a lot happening in London, and I hardly slept on the holiday, and just everything was basically just ramping up in my head. And we were literally home, I think, 2 or 3 hours. We'd ordered Chinese. I took the dog for a walk and came in and said, I'm not well. I'm not well. I need to be someplace else. And that's what started that. Yeah.
How did your family react to it? How did Mandy take that? Were there signs before?
Well, Mandy kind of, yeah. There were signs. I got very profound about life. Very profound about everything. Simple things like a simple cup of tea became a very profound thing and a very amazing thing and Mandy was kind of okay, trying to keep things down to earth and trying to keep things normal, and it was just getting very, very wacky, very out there. And she wasn't surprised. She knew I wasn't well. I was talking, sharing things and experiences with her, and she was kind of she knew that and I wasn't getting better. I was getting worse. So that's kind of it was helpful having Mandy there, because very often it's it's hard to tell by yourself.
Yeah.
You don't just sort of click and go, oh yeah, there must be something. This was a gradual decline. So I have a question here.
Go ahead there, I'll take it.
How did you guys cope during lockdown?
I don't know about you guys. I was busier than ever. And I was thankful for that. Not so thankful when I went on Facebook and saw 90% of my friends in their back gardens getting tans. But I was thankful for the routine and the ability just to keep my mind going, and because I find that helps a lot. It's one of my coping mechanisms, you might say. But towards the end of, going into the second one, not being able to go out as much or see friends and just find that, every day is just suddenly becoming just like the last. And it's monotonous. Routine's good, but too much routine.
Wow.
Yeah.
What would you, William? How do you find it?
Well, it was interesting. I work as a classroom assistant, and all of a sudden, schools were closed. So it was kind of it was bittersweet, because I was in P7. I'd gone with this class from nursery right to P7, and all of a sudden, we're stopping, and it was kind of like, oh, that's hard, because you don't get to see out this class. We stopped in March, and all of a sudden we're off, and there's kind of
It's hard for the kids that way too, isn't it?
Yeah, it was very difficult for them. I actually, it was lovely, because our nursery teacher in school actually got me involved in doing little sort of videos of nursery rhymes with the guitar and singing and stuff like that. So that
Mm-hmm.
that had me. It was I really enjoyed doing that, and I'm not a joiner. I don't profess to be really very good with working with wood or anything like that. But I actually made a bird table, which works, you know, and that's so that's good. But keeping busy, I think, was a big part of it. Keeping busy.
Yeah.
What about you, Adam?
Yeah, I'm so we're very busy. We were sales, like, to be honest, never really slowed down, which was good. Everybody says about their time off. They're like, what time off now? No,
Yeah.
it was good. No, we're very fortunate now. So. Yeah, so what advice would you give to someone or others who are trying to support or help someone who is struggling with mental health? What do you think of that, Andre?
What advice would I give someone who was supporting someone? Just to be there. But to be there, but not always be there. To give the person space, just to be flexible. People often think, oh, so-and-so's depressed, so I'll call round. I'll call round every day, or I'll phone them every day. For me personally, sometimes that adds pressure, and you feel
So,
even
like,
more
pressure
boxed.
to be good for them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You just let me be for a while, and learn that whenever that person's ready, they'll come to you. But also, it's kind of it's very nuanced.
Yeah.
There's no like hard and fast rule, like I'm on day 4, I need to ring them now or whatever. It's more of a
Natural.
letting someone know that you're there, but you're not pestering them.
I think that's true, because some people, and certainly with mental illness, there are times when people just want to be left alone. They're not able to engage with people. They're not able to articulate how they're feeling, and it's important to support, as you say. It's important to be there and to say to the person, "I am here for you." I had a good friend here who was very good, and he basically met me once every 2 weeks, and he was always very respectful of me. I'm allowed to mention his name, Ken Homestead. He was fantastic, because he would say to me, we'd meet up, and he'd say, right, we're going to meet up in fortnight's time, and we'll come here. We'll go out and have breakfast, and just knowing, and other people as well. I mean, I use Ken as an example, because Ken was a constant. He was very much, we're going to meet 2 weeks' time, and we'll go out, and this is what we'll do. And I needed that, whether I wanted to be out, whether I wanted that support, I needed it. And I think it's very important to just say to somebody, I'm there for you if you need me. And it can be a long old journey. The journey is a different length for people as well. Some people can trip in and trip out very quickly. Other people are there for the long stay, and it's reassuring a person that no matter what, I'm on the other end of the phone, and that's hard. That can be hard to commit to as well. Let's face it, that can be hard to actually say. I'd be there for you 24/7, and not to give up, I think, is the thing. It's very easy going through a mental illness to just want to go stop the world, to want to get off. But I think it's to reassure the person, I suppose, that look, hang in there.
Yeah.
Hang in there. You gotta have hope. A person has to have hope. You've gotta
Give them something.
Oh yeah.
Like, I think for me, like, trying to give it, I don't know if it's good advice or not, but for me, like, advice I like, what I've experienced is like, God will give you 2 eyes, 2 ears, and 1 mouth. I think that God's standing for a reason.
Yeah.
You have to listen and watch first before you speak. Like, talking Proverbs about thinking about what you're going to speak before you say it. I think, like, as humans, we're natural fixers. We just want to fix them. So, like, if you know somebody's struggling, like, right, how can I fix them? What's the solution here? But there's not always a solution. I think you have to take time, and people just want to be heard. And I say it's only from my experiences is if you can listen to somebody, people don't care about your solution until they know you can understand them and hear them. And like what might seem really minute and small to me might be somebody's biggest problem they've ever had in their life. I think it's really, really important to never ever belittle anything that somebody has. And say, like, somebody might think it's incredibly hard to go to the shop. And like, for fuck's sake, it's only going to the shop. But that might be the biggest thing to that person. I think it's taking that time to actually realise that everybody's completely different and never, take the time to understand and hear before you say anything. So that's just experience that I've had.
No, I think that's brilliant advice, because very often, I mean, a person suffering, when they're ready to talk, sometimes everything can come out. They talk, and if you're there to listen, and as you say, it's not always about, oh, let me fix this for you, or I give the solution, or it's just listening to you.
And do you know what? It's like some people just need, like, somebody like someone who's to be struggling with anxiety. They just need reassurance. Mm-hmm. It's not even that they want you to get the problem. They just need reassurance that that somebody else understands and knows, or even just be the ear to hear. And that can be everything. And not that they're not alone.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost a cliche, but one of the best pieces of advice was someone who was telling me their story, and I was telling them my story, and they went, "Yeah, me too." Mm. I was like, "So, I'm not mad. I'm not on my own in this." And then that person was also probably someone I would never have suspected of having a struggle. And, that started me on my path to dealing with it. That person then said me too and explained that they'd been on a medication, and that broke down some taboos. And, I'd always struggled with, my mum was on medication all my life for her depression. And I'd refused it. I was like, I'm not going to take tablets for the rest of my life. There's no way I'm doing that. But this person shared their story, and they'd been on tablets, and it helped them, and wasn't necessarily for the rest of your life or anything. So that's
what's that like?
It's a bridge.
Being on medication for fat there. What's that sort of?
Well, for me, my problem was my moods would go from really, really happy to really, really low. And I had no control over them almost. The doctor explained to me that my brain was using up its serotonin too quickly. So the medication was to slow that process down. But the drawback was, if you imagine your highs and your lows, I'd have really good highs and really bad lows. The tablets just brought that down. So I didn't have any real highs anymore, but I never had any really real lows. That meant that I kind of just coasted along. But before I was on my medication, I would find social things like church and parties and just even going out sometimes quite stressful. So in a week, my coping mechanism was, right, if I was out for a night at church on Sunday night, then Monday I didn't do anything out at youth club. On a Friday, Saturday, I was indoors all day, and to balance that. So once I went on the medication, I found I could do everything, but I missed the highs and the lows. It sounds strange, but I did miss the lows, because I missed. It was for a long time I didn't feel anything for a while. And that was probably the worst part of my depression, was feeling nothing.
Yeah, they kind of, use that word, numb you out a bit.
Yeah.
I remember that experience. And I know we have a joke in our house, because I would never take tablets. I suffer from migraines, and I would always say, "Oh no, the tablets don't work." And then I remember Mandy saying to me one day, "Have you actually taken the tablets?" "Oh yes, I have." "Have you actually taken them over a length of time?" "No." And she went, "Aha." So when I had to go on to similar sort of thing, imagine the serotonin booster, whatever, antidepressants, the antipsychotics, I had a real problem with that. I had a real issue with, and it was that whole male pride thing of, I don't need tablets. I don't need tablets. And then just jumping ahead slightly, during mental illness, I had a stroke. So now I'm on 3 tablets, and it's ironic really that from my point of view, I'm not taking tablets, to all of a sudden now I take 3 tablets a day for life. And it's that you kind of, God has a wonderful way of dealing with our pride, and it's for our good. It just brought me down to a kind of, okay, God, you're in charge. I'm not in charge here. I have to, because I'm still fighting, male pride. No. But then all of a sudden, you're you have to submit to it. But they do take the edge. It was described to me as a bridge. Medication is a bridge. I've heard of other people referring to it as a scaffold. And there is that stigma, I think, with people that, oh no, and for some people they don't. They don't. Tablets are for some people. Some people, it's a grey area, really, isn't it? Because some tablets work for some people, don't work for others, and but they have their place.
Yeah,
definitely.
Well, that kind of links back into coping mechanisms. So, did you have any coping mechanisms? What would you have done?
Jigsaw puzzles.
Jigsaw puzzles, really?
Jigsaw puzzles. 500-piece jigsaw puzzles, 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzles. Jigsaw puzzles, actually, I don't particularly do jigsaw puzzles, but for some reason, I got it in my head, jigsaw puzzles. And I think from a kind of, I suppose, a point of view of putting pieces together, making a picture and seeing the final thing and going, oh. There was something, I suppose, maybe subconscious in that, of kind of trying to put maybe me back together, trying to put my head back together. So I went through a period of, and then as soon as I got done, taking photographs of them, and some really, really lovely ones. But
do
it
you
was
get at
just,
our house? There's loads of
it was
Disney princess ones like with our the same ones.
no, I'm from the camera. No, but all sorts of ones, and it was just that was for me. That was part of it. Another one for me was just doing the music. I obviously, playing guitar and stuff like that. Yeah. And a friend of mine introduced me a lot of years ago to the violin. Now, if you've ever heard me playing the violin, it's an experience. Honestly, it's an unforgettable experience. You'd want to forget it, but it's just unforgettable. It's that bad. But that really helped me because I was able to try and play this really difficult because I don't read music and I was trying to teach myself, but it actually took me out of myself. It took me out of the, I remember in Downpatrick there was a guy who gardened every day. He was always doing the garden. He was always busying himself doing the gardening. And I remember thinking, what's the point? But it was doing stuff. It was doing stuff. It was it was taking yourself out of your head and doing other things. Was a big part of it. Huge part of it. But yeah, I'm not any better at the fiddle, but that was something as well. I think as well, I'm not a great reader, but I think during the a particular time, I found myself reading lots. Holiness by J.C. Ryle. Now, if you'd said to me 10 years ago, one is I would have said, I don't know whether I could read it now, but during that time, I would read that. Spiritual Depression, I think, was it Lloyd Jones? I think Martin Lloyd Jones. That was another one. Lots of Max Lucado books. And I just found myself hungry for reading. You know, hungry for reading. Strange times. Times where there were things obviously happening in my life that were, you know, but those were coping, I suppose. Getting back to the question, I'm going off track slightly. Those for me were coping mechanisms. Was keeping myself busy. You know, I think that was a big part of it, because to sit in when you're under the cosh, so to speak, sitting just in a room staring at the four walls, even for someone who is in a good place mentally, that's hard work. That's hard work. But if you're down, that's uphill. So that's, I think, keeping busy, getting into routines and stuff.
Oh, do you?
My coping mechanisms used to be going out, not going out, lots of me time, and that was just how I thought I was going to deal with it for most of my life. Was just, you know, be good old Andy Mac, 3 days a week, 3 or 4 days a week, and then the other few days when I wasn't out, I could just lie in bed and be myself. So the medication, you know, that brought me to a whole new understanding of life, where I could be just completely free and do things 5, 6, 7 nights in a row. And then I think I don't know how I came around to this notion of coming off the tablets. So slowly, over about 8 months, I just started taking them every other day, every third day, and then I haven't taken any in about 2 or 3 years now. So that's been, I think I have slipped back a wee bit, where I do find I need my own time every now and then. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, but I think that's I've taken that as a compromise rather than still having the highs and the lows. Mm-hmm. And I still get low times, but never as bad as they were. Yeah. Huh? William, one of the things that fascinated me about you were talking about earlier was you found yourself straying in your head, and Mandy, who's known you for a long time, she was your plumb line, and she'd recognised there was something happening. Mm-hmm. What were the warning signs? You know, what?
The warning sign. Well, first of all, just coming back at it, I suppose, and I'll answer that very, very shortly. Having somebody close to you is actually very helpful, because for me, even though the process of it was kind of gradual enough, it kind of ambushed me a bit. It was a bit kind of, you know, it took me by surprise. It wasn't a kind of a, you know, no one ever wakes up and sort of, you know, all of a sudden, I'm in really bad mental health today. You know, well for me, that not that nobody does. From my experience, that my personal experience was, it was quite a gradual thing. An example of how I was displaying. Again, I said earlier, I was very profound about everything. Everything was wow, and kind of, that's not really. I mean, I can be profound about simple things, but this was every single thing, and that was kind of quite unnatural. Another example was one day, Mandy's folks were around in her nana, and I got up and left the room, which I can still do now. I do that at home. We sort of joke about that, and there he goes again. He's up, but there's usually a reason for it. But this particular time, I went off and left the room. It's very rude. When you think about it now, you know, your in-laws are around, and you just get up and you walk out.
Right.
I would. That's very rude. That's not naughty.
Yeah, it's natural.
But that was
I've
me,
never done
and so I then came back downstairs, and nothing was said. It was fine. It was okay. And after Mandy's folks and her nana had gone home, Mandy said, what were you doing up there? I said, I was only upstairs for 5 minutes. She says, you were up there for 45 minutes? I said, no, it was only for 5 minutes. She said, you were up there for 45 minutes. So it was that kind of thing of, okay, what's going on there? There's a kind of a, not quite sure where the time went there. Another thing, I mean, everybody's personality is different. My personality still would be from time to time, and only my nearest and dearest would be able to see this and say this of me. I probably present to people as quite a chatty person, quite an open person, but there are times where I can be quite quiet. Very, very, very quiet. And one of the things that happened was I would go very, very quiet and like not speaking, no speaking at all, you know. And that was really kind of, for Mandy, that was peculiar. It was kind of, are you okay? So much so that now, even in a good place, if I'm quiet for any length of time, Mandy would still share with me. She still says it brings back for me those times of, okay, is he all right? Is he okay? The quietness. So that for me, it's that. I mean, we've talked. You've shared very openly about the mood, about how the mood can be up and then can be here. I suppose we're all like that. Feelings are like that. Emotions, thoughts, everything is kind of nothing. Nothing is kind of, you know, static. Everything's kind of fluid and movable. I think warning signs are definitely slight departures from the norm. Now, people can depart from the norm anyway, but I think we don't always, I mean, I didn't, in myself, I wouldn't have been that terribly aware. When I said, I need to go to Downpatrick, I need to go somewhere, I was aware at that stage, but leading up to that, it was no, it was okay, the warning signs were there. It was just the little changes, the little, you know, little changes in personality, random things coming off of maybe random statements, just a little bit maybe, you know, fixated about things. We joke in our house because I can be quite when I'm doing something like you know, Mandy would say to me, she should remind me now, because we think about mental illness and we talk about it and we can talk about it without any fear and without any pain. We couldn't talk about it at the time. It was very, very fearful, very painful. But when we bought goldfish in the house, I had to find everything out about goldfish. Everything about goldfish. When we bought a golden retriever, I had to find everything out about golden retrievers. When it was making the bird table, had to think every design under the sun how to make a bird table. And when it's, you know, playing the guitar, it's kind of right, what chords and what can we do that different, what can you do? And everything is quite, so in my head, I have quite a kind of, if I'm going to do it, I want to do it right. I want to do it properly. So therefore, there is that kind of personality trait. And I think maybe mental illness just found an easy kind of ruminative OCD. That was my diagnosis, ruminative OCD. And that was the diagnosis that I was given. They thought it was mania, bipolar. They weren't sure, but they ended up going on the ruminative OCD. And you can see now, I suppose, I can see in my personality, there are those things of...
That is like enhanced parts of your personality.
Absolutely.
Superimpose it.
And the things like that, I mean, you know, finding out about goldfish and not feeding them too much and how to clean a filter is very important. And how to find out about your golden retriever and how you're going to best look after them is very important, and how you're going to make the bird table is very important, and how you're going to play the guitar. All those things are very important. But if you take those things and you begin to kind of overthink those things and overdo those, then that can kind of, you know, that can, if you're, they very often say, I mean, I'm using OCD It could be any aspect. It could be depression. It could be, but OCD particularly hits on the perfectionist in people. Now, anybody who knows me says perfectionist. Yeah, come on, mate. You're not a perfectionist. But there is that element of wanting to get it just right. And that is so that they can play on that. I don't know whether that's answered the question. I've kind of rambled a bit there, so I do apologise. Warning signs.
I'll be honest, I wasn't expecting goldfish in your answer, but there we have
Yeah,
it.
that's again random. I assure you I'm fine. But it's those sorts of things. It's just those little changes made in personality. It's the kind of, I suppose, from a, having gone through depression as an element of as well, it is just that loss of interest. It is just that, we talked about going, I think, as I mentioned, you were saying about the difficulty of going to the shop. I wouldn't go to the shop. I was a chef for 20 years before being a classroom assistant. One day in the kitchen, all the pots were out, and it was a dish that I could make standing on my head. Couldn't do it. I had to say to Mandy, I said, I just don't know what to do. I can't. It's those sorts of, those little things just where people aren't coping. Just where people
Isn't
aren't.
it like with, like, in my experience, like, it's not one size fits all, as you're talking about. Like, it's like everybody's completely different. And it is, as you said, like, out of the normal. And sometimes it's not. Like, there's sometimes, like, a good friend of mine, he took his life not that long, a couple of months ago there. And I spoke to him about 3 weeks before. I was sitting talking to him for 20 minutes. And you wouldn't have thought anything. I was really, really happy person. And like, really, not, you wouldn't have, life was going great. And then next time, boom, you get the phone call. And there was no, for me, looking in, you're just like, what happened? And it's just, it's quite, and from a bystander, if that's the right terminology, that's quite hard to understand. That's like when you're not in that person's head who's going through the mental difficulty. It's really, I think it's very hard for the family and the friends to actually understand and come to it and find a way to help. And as we talked earlier, like, sometimes it is just trying to hear or give them space, or but it's trying to find that balance. And everybody's completely different. It's just finding that. Yeah, it's just out of the normal, I suppose.
It's the mask that we wear, and it is that thing of we can't be seen. Mental illness is so. We're kind of coming to this conversation now in a different time. 20 years ago, you didn't.
Yeah.
You didn't discuss things like this. You didn't talk about it. Whereas now we're in a situation where it's very much to the fore.
Yeah.
But still there is that stigma attached that I can't be seen to be weak. If I admit in some way that everything's not just going the way I want it to, then in some way I'm failing. Some way I'm not living up to a standard or what's expected of me.
I would say in my experience of within the army, you've very much that like, oh, I'm the big tough guy, do this and do that. And like everybody who's there has been in situations, thinks, right, well, just get the head down and take a glass of concrete to harden up, But it's very much, yes, there's a lot more conversations about it, but there's still so much pride with it too, so much like, even in yourself, even if anybody, not in just day-to-day struggles, it's really hard to talk about it and bring it out and talk to each other. And I think people who are, it's hardest to talk to your close friends and your family about it. I know and they're the people you want to talk to, you would want to talk to about it, but it's hard to bring that out, But it's it's breaking down those stigmas is where it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah. How do you guys find mental health in church? Because that would be one of the areas where I would find it quite difficult, where in church there's a certain expectation of you to be A, B, or C.
Yeah.
You know.
Do you know what? This blows my mind. It's like, as a Christian, you think prayer is like a golden bullet, and you think, and we we believe in the God who can do the impossible. But when you're in a situation, and when for me, you have somebody who you can see clearly they're in pain, they're going through what they're going through, and you're praying and nothing's happening. You know, and you're praying, like, that's such a difficult thing to actually stand back and watch that and see the prayer isn't the quick fix that you want it to be. Mm-hmm. And as a Christian, you're going, like, why? And you're fighting in your own head. You're fighting with God. Like, why is this not happening? You're doubting. You're going through all these in your head spirals. Why is this not happening? You know, and it's getting that understanding that might not be God's plan for that situation or that person at the time. And as a Christian, it's really hard to get that around, that sometimes prayer doesn't work as fast as you want it to work. And so it's just that thing, like, trusting God's timing. Like, God's never too early. He's never too late. Yeah. He always has the perfect time. And it's just having the faith in that like, yeah, it's got to, as a Christian, and even seeing another Christian going through that, you know, it just blows my mind how you have to come to terms with that. You know? Yeah. You know what it is. But
yeah, we expect the kind of, as you rightly said, just now, not tomorrow, not next week, not next month, now. And that's a really hard, because suffering on any level is just, you know, it's not God's original plan. It's the product of the fallen world that we live in, and and that doesn't answer that. That doesn't. It doesn't give comfort to a person who's struggling.
And when somebody's going through that, and you're when God feels silent, like in a struggle or a situation, when God feels silent, you have to, like, for me, I've came to the terminology where it'd be like, right, it's like a teacher in school. When somebody's getting their test, the teacher doesn't stand over and give them the answers and stand beside them and tell them what to do. I've sort of come to, like, when there is hard times, it's your faith is being tested, and God's shaping you and tested you. And it's trying to take that analogy and go, right, well, you know, how strong is my faith? Is my faith real? You know, and it's having that difficult struggle with God in those hard times. I don't know how you found that, like, but yeah,
absolutely. It's like they're a refining process, isn't it?
Tough,
painful, but necessary. Painful but necessary.
Certainly, there's times when, personally, when I've been low, and at the lowest I've ever been, God was just a concept. Even as a Christian, I was like, yes, there's a God, but I don't feel him. I don't see him. I don't feel it in here. And I know as Baptists, we don't like to, you know, talk about our feelings, and, you know, emotional Christianity's, that's for the Pentecostals, not really for us. And to a certain extent, I would agree that you can't base your faith on how you feel, because I, of all people, know I can feel amazing one day and terrible the next day. So God's distance to me isn't based on how I feel about him.
Yeah.
So that's one. It's like, if you remember, you might remember, William. You definitely won't, because you're too young.
Definitely too young.
Back in the CE days, you used to have like a sword drill. You'd have your Bible under your arm. And that, well, you would know about drills and stuff like that in the army.
Central Hall.
Where, you know, there's certain parts of your faith, I find, that it's helpful for you to learn when you are feeling good and your mood is good. And then you drum that into yourself for when you don't feel God near.
Yeah.
And that, your training comes back to you then. And you mightn't feel it. You mightn't think there actually is a God. But you know, your Bible might be sitting gathering dust. But deep down, you're like, I'll read a verse.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes that's all, you know, that's that's all you can manage.
Yeah.
That, I think that's the reality as well. You know, Christians, and we've talked about that, especially, you know, in church, can, especially if you're struggling with mental illness, you can really beat yourself up. And you can feel beaten. You can beat yourself up because you feel, I shouldn't be experiencing this. I shouldn't. I've got God and all His angels.
Yeah.
And yet I'm at rock bottom. And sometimes it is just, and I felt that many times. It was just one verse was all I could manage. And as you say, there are times where you just don't feel it. There was a particular time Keith came around and I just held my hands up. I said, and I just in that moment just said, I don't. That's me. I'm done. I don't believe there is a God. How could there be a God when I go through this? It was very. The thing about mental illness for me was, it was very self-centered. It was about me. It was about me. It wasn't about how I was affecting other people. It was about me, and that was the selfish me just saying, I don't want any more of this. I've had enough. I don't believe. I think that maybe lasted a few hours. And then the next day, you know, on my knees, knowing full well, I didn't mean it, Lord. I didn't mean it. I was just, you know, God understands that. I think, you know, no matter how we feel, God gets us. He watches us. You know, it's a lovely vision of God just, you know, and when we're at the lowest, God's right there in it. Mm-hmm. But at the time, we feel as if
God's silent.
We're a million miles away. Yeah. But He's there. He's there. You know, but that's hard when you're going through. Yeah. Hard to you know. Hard to know.
Yeah.
Okay. Was there any source of help that you reached out to? I'm gonna take us from my approach. Source that I reached out to, I would say no. From a bystander point of view, I would say I had the Bible and God. I have the Bible and God. I really drove me to dig deep into my faith. As somebody being so, when somebody confides in you, and whether they're going, you have to understand you might be the only person that person is confided in. You might be one of many, but you might be the only. And I think the importance of confidentiality and the importance of not what might seem, and what I said earlier, like what might seem minute to me, might seem not very important, might be the biggest thing that they've talked about in their life to you. I think that importance of confidentiality and bringing that on board and bringing it to God in prayer and just praying the life out of it, the life out of the situation. You know, I don't know, that's very easy to say, but it's hard to do. And especially when it's a loved one and you're a friend or anybody. It's just and I think you just have to understand that it can be a lot, even as somebody who's been confided, it can be a lot of pressure. It can be very little to you, but it can also be a huge pressure if you know somebody is on the verge of doing something to end their life. Like you might be the only person they're confiding in. Well, that's huge. That can be a huge pressure too. And I don't really have much advice to you on that one. That one sounds really bad, but it's just just bring it all to God. Like that's the only advice I can give to anybody in that situation. Have you had any source of help you've reached out to with your,
I've had some bad advice. I've had plenty of people tell me just to wise up. Or
do you know what I find, like, and mostly like when people are just telling you to wise up and they don't really understand, like it's easy for somebody, especially like, just go here, mate, shake yourself. Again, that might sound
Yeah.
Might sound easy to me, and but to you, that's like, the biggest thing ever,
Yeah.
If I could, I would.
Yeah.
That's the answer. No?
Catch yourself on. That's
Yeah.
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 I actually found myself, and again from a Christian point of view, the Christian friends, you reach out, and people are great, and they reach out back really. Family are great. I used Lifeline. You could phone them up.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't know who you were. You didn't know who they were. But you could talk. You could just say, I'm just feeling really... And they were just on the other end of the phone. And you see, and I think this is a thing as well. God can use anything and everything to help you.
Mm.
You can use very simple things just to help you. You're talking to somebody in Lifeline. Are they a Christian? Are they not a Christian? I don't know, but God has placed people. God places people, places His angels there to help. You brought up about confidentiality. That's a massive thing. That's a big thing. That's what I find. When you're sharing with people, and when I think about the stuff I shared, and it was done confidentially, you couldn't do it any other way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important to have that person. If you're that support for a person, going in God's strength and being confidential with them, that's massive.
Yeah.
That's a huge thing. It's that person then feels okay. It's the trust thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's a trust, because I think you hit it on it earlier, Andy. It was that thing of feeling alone. Feeling, and then somebody saying, me too. Being there, sat in that seat, worn a t-shirt. I've got the baseball cap and the badge. And you're kind of, all of a sudden, that's like, whoa, you're not alone.
Yeah.
And then when you experience that, there is that kind of, okay, I think I can talk to you about this.
Mm.
I think I can share this. That's massive.
Doesn't always come out at once.
No.
It can take that. Sometimes it does.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can take months.
Yeah. And there are people who just don't, by their nature, are private and won't talk about stuff. That's
I think it's quite hard for some people to understand that. Like, some people understand people are different, and especially and that you just want to hear everything and get everything, but you don't always get that. It's like a kid coming home from primary school, and you're trying to find out all the information. You have to really tactile about how you're asking it and what you're saying, and you're watching as well as hearing. You're not always talking. You're just getting wee nuggets of information throughout their day. That's how I find it.
And it's very often it's maybe in what is not said sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I on a slightly different tack, I remember I used to pick Connor up from school, and I would say to him, he'll not mind me saying this, so how was your day? And he would say, well, worst day of my life in primary school, worst day of my life. I don't want to talk about it. And my response 9 times out of 10 was, okay. And then he would say, okay, well, I'll tell you when we get to the car. And it is that thing of just giving a person time. Giving a person time for them to, and some people, as I say, will talk, and some people won't.
So what would you say, William, to someone who might be watching this and they're thinking, I haven't been coping that well recently, or, they've got a suspicion that maybe something, they need to talk to someone? What advice would you give them?
I would say talk. I'm, as you've probably gotten by today's, I talk.
You do like a wee chat, don't you?
I like a yaller. Everybody knows that. But I would say I think it's the people around you. People that you can't. I can't stress that enough. I chatted to a lady. I remember there was a lady in Downpatrick, and she came in. She was older than me, and she sat down opposite me. I think it was a Friday evening. We were sharing tea. You could sit with you just sat with people, and I think the thing about it is there was all ages and stages, all colours of the rainbow. So you met people of all types of backgrounds, and she said to me, "Remember Johnny McLaughlin come to see me, and he said." And he read, "Rejoice in the Lord." He said again, "Rejoice." And I can't remember the exact quote. I'm not good at full quotes. But the peace of God that passes all understanding will guard your heart. And Johnny looked me in the eye and he said, "And that you will know that peace, William. You will feel that." And I thought when Johnny was telling me this, and I was thinking, no. And I remember this woman came in. She'd been in a couple of days, and she was chatting to me over tea, and she said to me, "Actually, William, I thought you were one of the staff." And I kind of looked at her in disbelief and thinking, is that how I'm coming across? That's not how I feel inside. I really don't feel as if I've got this together. But what she said was, she said, "I'm going home to a flat with 2 cats." She said, "I'm going home to a flat with 2 cats." She said, "You're going home to your wife and your boys." She said, "You'll be okay." And it's that thing of being with people. And that's easy to say when you're with people. It's really difficult at the minute. We're in the middle of a pandemic, and it's not easy to meet with people, and Zoom terrifies people. I think I've met one person. Zoom, great, love it. But it is just, if I would say honestly, for anybody who feels that they're starting to slip a bit, is to just get in touch with somebody that they know that they can trust and just say, "Look, I'm not feeling great here. I'm not feeling great." You know, GPs are very helpful. You know, I know it's like trying to get an appointment now with a GP is very difficult. But my GP actually, I find him fantastic. Because I remember for me that was a big turning point. Because he said to me, "William," he said, "you won't want to get out of bed in the morning." He said, "But you're going to have to get into a routine. You're going to have to get up, whether it be get up, get washed, take the dog out, just get yourself into a routine." That was a massive, massive turning point. It was the business of, so bringing it back, talk, even if you think, you know what, it's not even worth really. If you're feeling, talk. I needed to talk. I needed to. I was kind of, because I think I was searching for answers. I really wanted to, and I talked some, and I think, I've talked enough. I think.
What do you got? I know you got that's all.
Yeah, I think talk, definitely. Find someone you can trust, confide in. If you know someone who's had mental health issues in the past, someone who's maybe been on antidepressants or whatever, they will understand more than anyone else.
Mm-hmm. Very often, that's really good advice actually, because very often it's not maybe, and there's a place for psychiatrists and psychologists, you know those people, but very often it's the friend that you trust. It's the neighbor that you know really well. It's the brother, it's the sister, it's the cousin, it's the whoever it is. It's the person that you trust. It's not always psychologists, psychiatrists have they have their part, definitely. But it's the people that you know that you can trust can make a big, big difference, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
What would you say to someone who doesn't understand mental health problems? Andy, that's a big one for you.
That's a big one, yeah. I think it's very easy not to understand it, because you nearly kind of have to have had it to understand it, because it's in your head. You know, there's plenty of alpha males who get up every morning and go for 10-mile run, and the Gillette advert men, and they're like go getters and they're like, amazing. But there's ordinary Joes out there who struggle every day just to get out of bed. And if you're an alpha male and you're up there and you're firing on all cylinders, you can't possibly grasp what it is to feel that it takes every ounce of strength in you just to get up out of bed, stick a smile on your face, and go out the door. It's trying to explain that to someone who's never felt it. It's nearly impossible. So what I would say to someone who doesn't get it is try and have some empathy. Try and think, like, have you ever been sad for no reason? Have you ever lost something? That sense of loss and sadness, imagine that was in you all the time. Or say you've been really stressed at work, things are coming in and your mind's spinning. Imagine if that's you without any work and your mind's spinning, or you're lying in bed at night and you can't get to sleep because your mind's like a hamster on a wheel. That's what's happening to someone with mental health issues. And everyone's different. It's easy. You can't just go, well, it will be this, or this. Because, yourself, William, it's not, your experience is very different to mine. And vice versa.
I always think of mental health issues as it's like if somebody's got a broken leg, you can see it. If somebody's got depression, you can't see it. If somebody's blind is probably a bad analogy. Everybody else can see it, but it's a long term, and somebody who's struggling with anxiety their whole life, it can be short or long term, but it's 9 times out of 10 it's hidden. And it's just never seen as the people generally people you just expect to have it. Yeah. Can struggle with it, and everybody can struggle with it at some stage or some point.
Yeah. I think, especially in churches, we can have a really wrong attitude that, right, you're a Christian, so therefore you have the greatest hope in your heart. So how can you feel depressed? How can you be anxious about coming in to a church building with all your brothers and sisters in Christ to worship? Pull yourself together. I do struggle, partially because my mum has been a Christian and brought me up as a Christian. That's been like a pillar in my Christian life, just because throughout all her struggles, her faith has never wavered. And that's taught me a million things. Was she a regular church attender when she was young? Yes. Is she now? No. Does that mean that she's not a Christian because she doesn't actually get into church? And I think we, as Christians, do have quite a banner about attendance. Oh, so-and-so wasn't there this week or hasn't been in 3 weeks. Oh, instead of having some empathy, going, maybe there's a reason for that, we can think, well, they're just not firing on all 4 cylinders like me, super Christian. That would be something I would say about people who don't get it.
That's good. That's a good answer. I say I've learned a lot on both of you tonight.
Well, I'm learning stuff about you as well, I must say, that I didn't know. So it's been
good.
And things about again, I didn't appreciate your story either. So
it's bad you never think of people like too. I don't know what you guys think like, but it's like you don't know what people are going through.
Yeah.
Anybody, Yeah, it's mad.
If you've been affected by anything that we've talked about tonight, please reach out to people. And if the person that you reach out to isn't responding to you or doesn't give you the help that you need, reach out to someone else. But don't just leave it there. Try and do something there. There's different things that can be a help to you. You don't have to go through things alone. There's different things that we can tell you about even now. Aaron, what was it you had there?
We would like to introduce you to some books and literature that we think might be really helpful and beneficial to you. I would like to tell you first of all about this book here that's called Wrestling with My Thoughts. And this book here is written by a doctor called Dr. Sharon Hastings. And this is a person here from Northern Ireland who shares of their life story. This is a medical professional who has went through mental health illness as well. And she really goes, it's quite revealing of all the journey that she's went through. But it talks here about how God still held her and how he's still really good, even though she totally lost her sense of reality, even though he was still there. And I think some of that was talked about in the roundtable discussion as well. So I would really like to recommend this book to you, Wrestling with My Thoughts. I think you have some stuff as well there, Stuart.
There's another one here, Caring for One Another. The goal of this book is that these meaningful relationships will become natural part of your daily life in your church. We're going to have a caption up in a moment telling you about some of these different books. Some of these are very small. Some of them, they don't go into a lot of detail, but they might be something that you need to get you started into looking more. We're going to give details after we finish talking here, and they'll be up on the screen so that you can see and try and find out about these for yourself. Just a simple Google search will be able to tell you where you can get these and where you can get the resources to be able to help you or to be able to help you help others who've been affected with this.
So we just want to say thank you for joining with us today as you have tuned in to watch our roundtable discussion. We really hope that you have enjoyed what the man has shared, and we really hope that it is a real answer to maybe some of the questions that you might have. Please do pass this on to anybody who you think would benefit from listening to it. And please do get in touch with us here at the church, or even just a guy who you would feel comfortable talking to, and we would love to hear from you. Have a great day, and God bless.